$300,000, Mom, sign it now, my son said, his voice cold as steel. Right beside him, my daughter-in-law folded her arms, lips pressed in a contemptuous smile. She cut in, sweet but venomous. If you really love your son, you won't let him get into trouble. The room that once felt warm suddenly turned airless. I, the woman who clipped coupons to feed and school my child, was being treated like a talking wallet. My son leaned in and whispered, "If you don't pay, they'll come for us first." Threats. Begging. Both lived in my son's eyes at once. I trembled, but I still poured tea and smiled. Under the table, my left hand quietly pulled out the key to the fake safe. "You'll have the money before tonight," I said softly. My son nodded, thinking he'd won. But when the door shut, I opened the real safe. Inside was the power of attorney that moved everything into my private trust. Tonight, it wouldn't be the money that disappeared. It would be me, the obedient mother he thought he knew. If you're still listening, tell me where you're watching from. Every comment you leave is another mark in this journey. And if this story has touched you, don't forget to hit like so it can reach even further. I'm Beverly Hale, 70 years old, living in San Diego, California. This cedar-sided beach house was where my husband Robert and I built a life. After he died of heart disease 12 years ago, I stayed alone, tending roses, making tea every afternoon, watching waves hit the shore. I thought I'd coast through the rest of my years in peace until this morning. Marcus, my only child, 45, walked in without knocking. I can still see him as a toddler tearing around the yard, shouting, "Mom," in that clear little voice. But today he came back like a stranger, cold, busy, and carrying the smell of trouble. With him was his wife, Tessa Lynn, the daughter-in-law I've never truly trusted. Tessa always arrives wrapped in expensive perfume with an appraising gaze, like she's pricing every object in the house. I used to think I was being unfair, that if Marcus was happy, that was enough. Over time, I realized Tessa didn't love Marcus. She loved what Marcus could extract from me. They sat across from me at the dining table, the same one where we used to gather every Thanksgiving. Marcus didn't ask how I was, no hug. He pulled a thick stack of papers from his leather case and slapped it onto the wood. Tessa slowly opened her handbag, took out a gold fountain pen, and placed it on top. "I need you to sign this," Marcus said, offering no explanation. I frowned. "Sign what, Marcus?" "Guarantee papers," Tessa answered for him, her voice sweet enough to sting. Well, we're having a small hiccup with an investment. If you help just a signature, this will be over in a few weeks." I pushed the paper back and skimmed it. A number in bright red. $300,000. My heart sank. "Marcus," I said, keeping my voice steady, "that's nearly all my savings. My pension barely covers medicine and the house. Where do you think I'm supposed to pull that kind of money from?" Marcus exhaled hard, as if I were the irresponsible child. "Mom, I know you have a separate account. I've seen the statements. Just help this one time. You don't need much. You live alone. The house is paid off. You're fine." Tessa folded her arms and smirked. "We're not asking. We're borrowing. But if you stall, the lender will lose patience. And then it won't just be us in trouble." I looked up at her and saw a cruel satisfaction in her eyes. She was enjoying every second of pushing me to bend. "Why should I trust you?" I asked quietly. "Last time you borrowed to expand the business. Before that it was to help a friend in urgent need. I've never seen a single dollar come back." Marcus clenched his jaw. "Don't be dramatic. I'm your son. I've never done anything to hurt you." I met his eyes. "You don't have to hurt me. Treating me like a tool is enough." The air thickened. I could hear the clock hands scrape. Forward. Marcus folded the paper and slid it toward me. "Mom, if you don't help, they'll come for me and Tessa. This isn't a joke." This time, there was real fear in his voice. I couldn't tell whether it was the lender or a money hunger choking him. I pressed my lips together and nodded. Fine. I'll take care of it. Marcus exhaled in relief. A smile returned, a smile I no longer recognized. Thanks, Mom. I knew you'd understand. Before tonight, okay? I nodded without a word. They left in a cloud of pricey perfume and Tessa's heels ticking coldly on the wood floor. When the door closed, I sat for a long while, listening to the wind thread through the frame. In the empty house, I looked around old photos, Christmas cards, the mug Marcus painted as a kid. I realized I may have lost my son long ago. Today just made it impossible to ignore. I stood and went to Robert's old piano. Under the lid, tucked among the scores he used to play, was the small steel box I'd hidden for over a decade, my real safe. Inside was the power of attorney Nora Patel had drawn up, transferring my retirement funds into a trust called B.H. Heritage, known only to Nora. I called Nora. Her voice was low and steady. Beverly, let me guess. Marcus came again? Worse, I said. He brought Tessa, and they want $300,000. After I explained, Nora sighed. Don't send anything, don't sign anything. Keep every original document. I'll trigger the asset protection file. I thanked her. Then I opened the envelope holding proof of prior transfers, more than $200,000 loaned over 8 years. Statements, notes, dates, and promises Marcus never kept. Before dark, I texted my sister Clara in Arizona. If you don't hear from me for a few days, don't worry, I'm just taking a trip, but please keep the family photo safe. It was our private safety signal. I withdrew some cash, then went to the bank to open a new account and stop all paper statements from going to the old address. When the clerk asked for the trust name, I smiled slightly. Heritage, the legacy of a mother who learned to stop paying other people's debts. That night, I packed a few changes of clothes, medications, passport, a USB with statements, and a small envelope I left on the kitchen table. Inside was one handwritten note. Marcus, you're right. I won't let them come for you. But I also won't let them find me. I looked around the house one last time, the place that held Robert's laughter, Marcus's little boy giggles, and my own belief that family love was unconditional. At 9 p.m., I locked the door, stepped out with a small suitcase, and called a car to Santa Fe Depot to catch the night train to New Mexico. My destination was Santa Fe, a place no one in our family had ever set foot. Through the train window, city lights blurred and dimmed. I clutched a small notebook, the ledger of every borrowed dollar from Marcus, each line a cut. As the train slipped into darkness, I closed my eyes. Tomorrow, Marcus would come for money. All he would find was an empty house and a mother who had disappeared, gone for good from the role of victim. Before leaving San Diego, I stopped by Mr. Coleman's, my neighbor across the street for 20 years. He's a lean former Navy man, eyes still clear and kind. I handed him the spare keys and said softly, "Would you water the roses for me? I'm visiting an old friend for a bit." He nodded without prying. We've known each other long enough to understand that silence can be the kindest act. I added, "If anyone asks, I'm on vacation. And please don't accept any packages for me." Mr. Coleman smiled gently. "Don't worry, Beverly. I kept silent for 40 years in the service. A few weeks won't be hard." I thanked him and walked away, a little lighter. From the station, I called Nora Patel. Her voice was husky but firm. "Beverly, I filed for asset protection. But you need one more thing. A limited power of attorney. If Marcus tries to claim your assets or files to have you declared incapacitated, I can stand in legally." I heard every word. In a world where your own son can use the law to strip you of everything, a friend like Nora feels like rare luck. She sent the document electronically. I printed it at a shop near the station and signed in front of a clerk as witness. We scanned and stored it in a secure cloud. For the first time in my life, justice felt like armor if you know how to put it on. Before leaving the house, I set a decoy envelope on the kitchen table. Inside were photocopied statements, a few pages listing Marcus's loans, and a single line in my handwriting. "You taught me how to live for myself." I knew Marcus was sharp enough to catch the subtext. The roles had changed. I was no longer the rescuer. I was the one pulling the boat away. I didn't go straight to Santa Fe. I took small hops, San Diego to Flagstaff, Arizona, then to Santa Fe, New Mexico. I paid in cash, swapped my old SIM, and shut off all location services. The train rattled through desert night. Outside, ribbons of yellow light faded into black. I leaned back, the rails clacking like a heartbeat. Every bend felt like a new breath, freedom woven with fear. In Flagstaff, I stayed one night. The high country city was cold and still. The scent of pine threaded my hair. In a small cafe, I wrote, "Day 1, leaving what I used to call home." I didn't know whether I was running away or finding my way back, only that for the first time in years, I chose my own direction. 3 days later, I reached Santa Fe. Small, sun-bright, with a cozy old-world feel, like a many-colored wool blanket. I rented a tiny room near the plaza, thick adobe walls, low roofline, a faint smell of wood smoke. The landlady, Isabel, a widowed Mexican woman, spoke as softly as wind. When I paid cash for the first week, she just nodded. "Here, we don't ask too many questions. Make yourself at home." That nearly made me cry. It had been a long time since I'd heard the word home without flinching. I spent the first days settling into a new rhythm. Mornings, I walked around Santa Fe Plaza, where native artisans display silver bracelets and woven scarves. Afternoons, I sat in a nearby cafe, watching the world go by with a cup of chamomile to steady my hands. Evenings, I sat at the small wooden table, opened my laptop, and logged every dollar Marcus took, date by date, reason by reason. I pulled old texts, searched transfer emails, marked every broken promise. I wanted a precise timeline, a full picture of how my son turned his mother into an endless bank. The more I wrote, the clearer I felt. Each number stung, but pain sharpened my resolve to see this through. One night, Nora called. "Beverly, I checked your credit file. It looks like Marcus or someone opened a sub-account under your name. That's identity theft. We need to lock this down now." My hands shook around the phone. The invasion of my money, my name, my dignity made it hard to breathe. Nora walked me through calling the bank to freeze any unauthorized activity and filing with the credit bureaus. She also urged me to get a cognitive capacity evaluation in case Marcus tried to claim I was not competent and seize control. The next morning, I went to a local clinic. The Dr. Leland, a middle-aged man, listened while I told part of my story, then said, "You're sharper than many people I see, Mrs. Hale. Your clarity is its own evidence." I smiled faintly. For the first time in years, someone told me I was clear-minded, not weak, not old, not confused. When he signed the certificate, it felt like reclaiming a lost piece of myself. That afternoon, I went to the Santa Fe police station to meet Lieutenant Sofia Alvarez, whom Nora had referred. She's around 40, sun-browned, eyes keen but not cold. As I described Marcus and the vague threats about dangerous lenders, she nodded. "You did the right thing leaving. We see this a lot, adult children using financial danger to coerce parents. If you get anything suspicious, forward it straight to me." She wrote her direct number on a card and handed it over. I tucked it into my wallet like a small charm. That night in my little room, I opened the window to let desert wind in. On the table lay my new phone, a brand new SIM only 3 people knew: Nora Patel, my sister Clara, and Lieutenant Alvarez. 3 people. 3 layers of protection. I called it my safety chain, a small, sturdy circle around me. I looked up at the Santa Fe sky stars scattered like salt on velvet. I realized something. All my life I thought safety meant being close to family. Turns out, real safety is not having to fear your own family. I closed my notebook and added one. Last line for day 7. I don't know what tomorrow holds. But for the first time, I'm not just existing, I'm living on purpose. Next morning, church bells drifted from afar, mixed with the smell of fresh roasted coffee. I put on a jacket and stepped outside. The early sun washed the red earth walls, reflecting warmth into my eyes, strange but hopeful. I knew the road ahead was long and Marcus wouldn't give up easily. But at least this time, I was a step ahead. Maybe that's where freedom starts. A few days after I settled in Santa Fe, my new phone started ringing nonstop. Unknown numbers. No caller ID. But I knew who it was. Marcus. The first call, his voice shook, pretending to be gentle. "Mom, I'm sorry about losing my temper." Tessa panicked, and I wasn't calm. "I just need a short-term loan. I'll pay you right back." I said nothing. I listened to prove I could keep my silence. A few hours later, the second call, his voice cold, sharp, mean. "If you won't think you can disappear and not be found, you're wrong. I know where you are. Don't push me to do something stupid." I hung up. My heart pounded, but I wasn't shaking. I opened my notebook and logged the date, time, and content of each call. Not to remember, to use as evidence. 3 days later, an anonymous email landed in the inbox I use only with Nora. Subject: "Look what they did in your name." My palms were slick as I opened it. Inside, a photo of a loan contract, Tessa as primary signer, with my forged signature as asset guarantor. The interest rate, 37% per month. A chill ran through me. Someone was using my name, my signature, even my reputation to legalize a mountain of debt. Under the notary block, a scrawl read, "Mother agreed verbally." I could practically hear the sneer in that line. I printed everything and sent copies to Nora. Half an hour later, she called. "Beverly, this is signature forgery and identity misuse. We're filing a complaint immediately. I'll deal with the bank." Her tone was calm, but I heard anger braided through it. I knew Nora wasn't just defending a client. She was defending a friend. The next day, Nora reported, "The bank confirmed a sub-account authorization filed under my name submitted last month at a branch only blocks from Marcus's house." The signature looked close enough that I had to study the final stroke to see a wobble. I shook not from fear, but from hurt. My son had forged my name. "Beverly," Nora said on the phone, "I filed the forgery complaint. From here on, be extremely careful. They may try to find you and pressure you to drop it." I was quiet, then asked softly, "Can Marcus do something worse than this?" Nora sighed. "With someone drowning in debt and losing control, you should be ready for anything." The next day, I met with Lieutenant Sofia Alvarez. I told her everything. She listened, took notes, and lifted her eyes now and then with steady resolve. "Mrs. Hale," she said, "I think you should temporarily move to the city's safe house for seniors facing financial abuse. It has 24/7 protection. I'll arrange it personally." I looked at my small, warm room and the wood smoke in Isabel's kitchen. Then I nodded. "I understand. I'll go." The safe house sits on the city's south side, in a quiet neighborhood. From the outside, it looks like a small lodge. Long porches, rocking chairs, a lavender garden. Inside, warm light, the smell of fresh-baked sweets, radio news in the afternoon. I was greeted by June, the coordinator, a woman around my age, with a patient smile. "Here, no one asks what you've lost," she said as she gave me a tour. "We help you take yourself back." My room had a bed, a desk, and a window facing the grassed hill. That first night, wind slid past the frame, and for the first time in weeks, I slept through. In the days there, I met many women like me. An 80-year-old forced by her son to sell her house to invest. Another whose granddaughter drained her retirement account and vanished. We sat around a wooden table, telling and listening, no one judging. Every story was a wound, but proof I wasn't alone. The pattern was always the same: manipulation, guilt, threat, dependence. You don't need shouting to abuse someone. Sometimes 3 words, "Don't you love me?" are enough to make an old woman buckle. On June's advice, I froze my credit at all 3 bureaus. Each needed a different PIN, and I mailed separate security letters. I added 2-factor authentication to every bank and email account. Each small step made me stronger, not because I'm tech-savvy, but because I was taking back control. Meanwhile, Nora sent a case summary. All prior transfer statements, a call log with Marcus's threats, the anonymous email with the loan contract, images of the forged signature. I printed everything and tucked it neatly into a blue file folder. It wasn't just legal evidence, it was the story of how my own child treated me like a living piece of collateral. One morning, I got a message from Tessa. No saved number, just a short line. "They'll come to your house first. Don't stay there." I read it over and over. Who were they? Marcus, or the people Tessa owed money to? That question hung in my head all day. That evening, I called Lieutenant Alvarez. She said, "It's possible Tessa is genuinely scared. We'll increase undercover patrols around the shelter. As for you, don't go out without telling us first." I agreed. I didn't want to trust Tessa, but I understood. Desperate people can do anything. The next day, Nora called back and told me I should file for a temporary protective order against Marcus. I hesitated. Part of me still wanted to believe my son was just confused, that if given a chance, he'd feel remorse. "Beverly," Nora said slowly, "this isn't revenge, it's for your safety. If you don't do it, he could come back, and next time, it won't just be about money." I stayed quiet for a moment, then nodded even though she couldn't see it. "I'll do it. I'll file tomorrow." The Santa Fe County Court processed the paperwork quickly. I filled in each field. Accused, Marcus Hale. Behavior, harassment, financial threats, identity fraud. My hand shook a little as I signed, but I signed anyway. As I left the courthouse, Nora called, "Beverly, I want you to tell your story to the district attorney's office. They have a special program for elder abuse. If we frame this case properly, we can protect you longer term." I looked up at the Santa Fe sky. Bright sun. Dry wind like sea salt. "Okay," I said. If staying silent for decades only made things worse, then this time, I'll speak. That night, I sat alone by the window. Far away, cars passed and their headlights slid across the glass, each streak of light, reminding me life kept moving even when someone had turned away from me. In the rearview mirror of my past, I saw the face of a mother who always forgave, always yielded, always paid other people's debts. Now, the person in the mirror was still me, but the eyes were different. I said softly to myself, "If anyone looks back one day, they'll know." I chose to save myself before it was too late. And in that moment I realized, a rearview mirror isn't just for looking back, it's to make sure you're leaving what's wrong behind you. One morning in early May, a light knock woke me up. It was June, the shelter coordinator. Her face was usually gentle, but today it was tight with worry. "Beverly," she whispered, "the police just called. 2 men parked outside the fence all night. They didn't get out, they just sat in the car looking toward the shelter." I tightened my robe. "Did they say anything?" No. But Lieutenant Alvarez has been alerted. The police are increasing undercover patrols around here. Her words sent a chill down my spine. I had thought I'd gone far enough to avoid Marcus's reach, but distance is never enough when the person chasing you shares your blood. That afternoon, Lieutenant Sofia Alvarez came by. She was in plain clothes and carried a thick folder. "Mrs. Hale, we need your cooperation for a sting," she said. "We have to find out who's really behind this, Marcus, or someone else." I sat up straight. "Tell me what to do. We'll have you log back into your old bank account from a downtown coffee shop. Undercover officers will be nearby, capturing all the data. If anyone is tailing you, we'll know." I nodded. Inside, I felt fear and resolve at once. I had run once. I didn't want to run forever. 2 days later, I sat with Alvarez in an unmarked police car parked a few hundred yards from the Adobe Bean Cafe. The Santa Fe sun was harsh, the road mottled with tree shadows. I wore a light jacket and a wide-brimmed hat, just another elderly tourist. Through a small earpiece, Alvarez said, "When I signal, go in, order your drink, open your laptop, and log in like usual." I gave a small laugh even as my heart raced. You know, when I was young, I thought sting operations only happened in movies. Who knew I'd be the lead at 70? She chuckled, then grew serious again. "You're stronger than a lot of younger people, Mrs. Hale." I went in and chose a seat by the window. The cappuccino steamed and smelled wonderful. My hands shook a little as I opened the laptop and typed in my login. For the first few minutes, nothing happened. "Welcome, Beverly Hale" popped up, and I exhaled. But a few minutes later, a security alert flashed. "Another device is attempting to sign into this account from a location 48 miles away." I looked up. Across the street, a gray SUV sat parked, the windshield reflecting sunlight and hiding whoever was inside. Alvarez's voice crackled in my ear. "We see it. IP-confirmed access origin is near Marcus's workplace in San Diego. We'll seek a search warrant." I closed my eyes for a moment. Part of me had known, but hearing it confirmed still hurt. 3 days later, Alvarez called. They'd arrested a young man named Greg Hudson as he tried to leave the state. In his pocket was a slip of paper with my boarding house address, some cash, and a note. "Just scare her. Don't do anything stupid." Under that line were initials, M.H. I went silent. "Greg says Marcus hired him to tail you," Alvarez said. "Do you want me to read the rest of his statement?" "I need to hear it," I said. She lowered her voice. "Marcus said he wanted to bring Mom home safely before someone else takes advantage of her. That's how he justified it." I laughed, but it sounded rough and bitter. "Bring me home safely? By hiring someone to scare me in the middle of the night?" Alvarez stayed quiet to let me breathe. My heart felt like it split in two, not from fear, but from realizing that the child who once hugged me had become a stranger. If it were you, how would you react when the person you love most uses fear to control you? I truly want to hear your thoughts in the comments because sometimes honest sharing is what helps us recognize our own strength. When the call ended, I sat for a long time, staring into the sunlit courtyard. Some truths need no more proof. I understood then. Marcus was willing to sell out his mother to escape his debts. In that moment, a door inside me closed for good. I wasn't going back. I called Nora Patel and told her everything. She listened and said right away, "Beverly, I'm filing for a temporary freeze on all real estate in your name. I don't want anyone using this to shift assets to creditors." I nodded, though she couldn't see me. "Thank you, Nora. More and more, I feel like you're the one holding the job. Map for my life." Nora gave a small laugh. "No, Beverly. I'm just holding the flashlight. You're the one walking." That night, I set a small recorder on the table and began telling my life story. Not for the court for me, I talked about Howard, my husband, gentle but weak, the man who promised to protect me forever, then left early, and I filled the void with sacrifice. I talked about Marcus, the first time he lied at 17, the smile on his wedding day with Tessa, and the look in his eyes the day he tried to force my signature. I saved everything to the cloud, locking it with Robert's birth date, so if anyone ever stumbled on it, they'd know this was the story of someone who loved too much and learned to stop in time. After I left the shelter, I signed up for a basic self-defense class at the senior community center. The instructor was a petite woman named Carmen, a former police officer. She taught me to use breath to balance, how to break a wrist hold, how to look someone in the eye without shaking. The body remembers how to stand tall, she said. You just have to give it the chance. The first class, I fell twice and bruised my knees. By the third week, I could block a light strike and twist away from a grab. Each time I looked in the mirror, I saw a different woman returning, no longer hunched, no longer just enduring. One evening, right after class, my phone rang. Tessa. Her breath was ragged. I could hear things crashing in the background. Beverly, help me. Marcus is out of control. He smashed everything, locked me out of my accounts, and said he's taking the kids to Mom's safe place. I froze, cold sweat running down my back. Stay calm, Tessa. Where are you? In the bedroom. He just stepped out, probably to call someone. I don't know what to do. I took a deep breath. Listen to me, do not come to me. Absolutely not. Take the kids to the nearest women and children's shelter. I'll call Lieutenant Alvarez. She'll help. But, no buts. Marcus isn't safe. Don't let him lead you by the nose again. I heard her sob, then a door slam. Before I hung up, I said, Tessa, don't think you're doing this for me. Do it for yourself. Right after that, I called Lieutenant Alvarez. She picked up after a single ring. I know, she said quickly. We just got word from San Diego PD. Marcus left the house with a suitcase and 2 registered firearms. They're tracking him. My hands went ice cold. Don't worry, she continued. I'll coordinate with California and get Tessa and the kids to safety. No one will know where you are. I sat down, heart hammering. In that moment, I understood this fight wasn't just legal, it was about survival. Out the window, evening light stretched across the dirt road, staining the bougainvillea fence red. I closed my eyes and prayed for Tessa and my 2 grandkids. Then I opened my notebook and wrote one simple line. If Marcus has turned mother and son into a battlefield, then I choose to stand up, not to win, but to survive and keep what's human in me. Outside, the wind rose and rattled the door. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of the knock at my front door. A text from Lieutenant Sofia Alvarez arrived close to midnight. Just a few lines. Tessa and the kids are safe. Marcus was stopped on Interstate 8. No one was hurt. I read it several times. In the dark, my chest tightened, relief mixed with heaviness. I didn't want to picture Tessa clutching the kids and crying in a police car, but at least they were away from their father's hands. The next morning, Nora Patel called. Her voice was clear and steady, as always. Beverly, it's time to move from defense to offense. What do you mean? We're going to formally sue Marcus on 3 counts: elder financial abuse, signature forgery, and third-party threats to your safety. I've almost finished the file. I gripped the receiver. In my entire life, I never imagined a mother would have to sue her own son. But now, it wasn't a choice. It was my duty to protect what was left of me. 3 days later, I met Nora at her downtown Santa Fe office. She spread a stack of files nearly a hand thick across the table. Bank records, statements, emails, images of the fake contract, and my sworn declaration, a detailed account of everything. Beverly, she said slowly, the evidence is strong. But I want 2 additions: a medical capacity letter and audio recordings of the threats. Together, they'll show you're fully competent, coerced, and threatened." I nodded. I had both. I handed over a USB with the recordings and Dr. Leland's letter. "You're right. I won't let anyone use my age to turn me into a pawn." I signed every page, the pen line a little shaky but firm. When I put the final signature down, it felt like closing a whole chapter, not just of the case, but of the old life where I explained, covered, and forgave Marcus over and over. A week later, the Santa Fe County Court granted a temporary no-contact order against Marcus Hale and required him to appear for a hearing within 10 days. When Nora read me the notice, my hands warmed not from victory, but from feeling, for the first time, that the law stood with me. I no longer had to cower behind fears of being labeled an overbearing mother or a paranoid old woman. Now each document and signature in the file was proof I was protecting myself, not destroying anyone. On the morning of the hearing, I wore a navy coat, the color Robert liked. The courthouse was small, bright-walled, and chilly. I walked in and saw Marcus across the room. He was clean-shaven, hair slicked, white shirt crisp. When he saw me, he gave a sad smile, as if to say, "I'm just a misunderstood victim." Beside him stood his young, well-dressed attorney with a thick stack of papers. As the judge entered, Marcus stood, voice wavering. "Your Honor, I only wanted to help my mother. I never threatened her, never forged her signature. Someone used my name. My mother and I were very close. She's just emotionally influenced." I met his eyes. Those pleas no longer weakened me. Across the room, Lieutenant Alvarez and Nora sat ready. The judge asked for the digital evidence. The screen lit up IP data from the bank login at the cafe. The address was clear: Marcus's San Diego office. Then, the bank's surveillance footage, the person filing the fake authorization, Marcus himself, in dark glasses and a dark jacket. The courtroom went dead quiet. Marcus dropped his gaze and bit his lip. His lawyer fumbled through the papers. The judge spoke briefly. "The evidence is consistent. The no-contact order remains. If further proof appears regarding a sham loan agreement, the court authorizes referral for criminal will d'obtuar, prosecution." I closed my eyes and took a long breath. Not joy, not triumph, just a quiet peace, like breathing after years of holding my breath. That evening, I got a text from Tessa. She forwarded an email from Marcus's account. "Keep Mom's name on the house, it's easier to borrow. If things go bad, she'll take the hit." Just one short line, but it ended any doubts. Nora printed it immediately and filed it with the court. "This is the final piece," she said. "He can't deny it now." At the next proceeding, I was asked to testify under oath. I stood straight, hand on the Bible, voice steady. I told everything, from the pressure to sign for $300,000, to the calls and threats, to the days I spent running. I spoke with the calm of someone who'd hit bottom and climbed back. And when I ended with, "I'm not speaking to get revenge. I'm speaking so people like me know they're not alone." The courtroom was silent. The judge nodded, his eyes warmer than I'd seen. For the first time in months, I felt free, not because I'd won, but because I told the truth under oath without fear of losing my son. 3 days later, Marcus violated the no-contact order. He sent me a long message, half threat, half plea. "You're destroying this family. I can make it all go away, just drop the case." I forwarded everything to Nora and Lieutenant Alvarez. In less than 24 hours, Marcus was remanded for the violation and for threatening a witness. When I got the news, I simply placed my hand on my chest and whispered, "Justice still works, even if slowly." I gathered the few things I'd kept at the shelter and moved into a small studio downtown. The place was just a little over 320 square feet, white walls, a window over a sunlit street. Using the BH Heritage Trust, I signed a 1-year lease and prepaid 6 months. On the first day, I hung a photo of me and Robert when we were young, his bright smile, his hand on my shoulder. I switched on the warm lamp, made chamomile tea, sat at the table, and looked out the window. No one knew who I was in this city, and for the first time, that felt good. No one asked what kind of mother I'd been, what mistakes I'd made, why my son had betrayed me. I was simply Beverly Hale, a 70-year-old woman starting over. As night fell, I opened my laptop and typed a few lines to Nora. "I've signed the lease. Thank you for helping me keep both my assets and my dignity," she replied almost immediately. "You don't owe me thanks. You saved yourself. I'm just a witness to that journey." I smiled and closed the laptop. Outside, Santa Fe lit up. Soft music drifted from a nearby bar and wove into the night breeze. I sipped my tea and felt the warmth slide down my throat. Maybe tomorrow I'd still be in court, still facing painful memories, but at least I was standing on my own 2 feet. And for me, after everything, that was already a victory. Santa Fe has a habit all its own. Saturday mornings smell like cinnamon and ring with guitars on the Central Plaza. After years of living like a ghost in my own house, I eased into that rhythm, slowly but surely. I brought a few hand-embroidered scarves and pecan pies I baked myself, and rented a tiny booth at the craft market near the plaza. The setup was just an old wooden table with a blue cloth, a few jars of wildflowers, and a hand-lettered sign, "Beverly's Pies, sweet enough, never harsh." People stopped, chatted, tasted. Some complimented, some joked. "You bake like you're from the South, don't you?" I just smiled. Yes, I brought the taste of my old home, but not the past. The money wasn't much, but it was steady. Some days I sold out before noon, other days I barely covered the booth fee. Strangely, every time I packed up, I felt fuller than any bank account had ever made me feel. One morning, the booth next to me was taken by a neat, silver-haired woman with a trim figure and thin-rimmed glasses. She introduced herself as Agnes, 75, an accountant for 40 years at an insurance company. "You sell pies? I sell knit bags. On slow days we can trade," she said. I laughed. "If your bag can hold a pie box, deal." We quickly became friends. Agnes was witty, practical, and straight to the point. One afternoon she pulled out a small notebook and said, "Beverly, now that you're on your own, you need a personal budget. Don't let money boss you around again. I'll show you the 50-30-20 rule." I widened my eyes. Sounds like a 10th grade math problem. "It's not hard," she laughed. 50% for essentials, 30% for joy, 20% for savings or an emergency fund. That's it. That night I tried it. I wrote in my notebook, rent, $800, groceries and utilities, $400, personal $5, spending, $200, savings, $240. Not big, not much, but every number was chosen by me, and that's what made me feel free. The next month, I asked the community center for permission to start a free embroidery class for older women. Only 6 people came, but on the first day the little room filled with laughter. We sat in a circle, needles clicking, the faint smell of cinnamon tea in the air. Between stitches they told their stories. About a son who borrowed his mother's pension and never paid it back. About a granddaughter who took all the savings under the name of investing. About an ex-husband who kept signing his wife's name on debt papers. I didn't interrupt anyone. Only when they paused did I say, "We stitch to remember that every stitch can mend a tear, even the ones inside." And so, my embroidery class became a quiet sharing place for people who'd been hurt, a simple kind of healing that worked better than any medicine. One afternoon, Lieutenant Alvarez called. Her voice was low and clear. "Mrs. Hale, I have an update. The district attorney's office has accepted your case. Marcus Hale will face charges of fraud and threats. They'll send an official summons within 2 weeks. I sat still, as if someone had just opened a window and let the light rush in. I didn't feel joy, just lightness. So light that tears fell before I noticed. She added, "You should be prepared. The defense may ask to negotiate." I answered immediately, "If it's about money, I won't negotiate. I've paid enough in this life." A few days later, Tessa called again. She said she was settled in a women and children's shelter and had started a part-time job at a local grocery store. The kids had been enrolled at a nearby school with tuition support. "I know you don't want to hear my voice," she said, "but I just wanted to say, I'm sorry," I answered softly. "It's not to me who needs to hear it, it's you who needs to say it. Keep living decently, Tessa. Don't let someone else's mistakes define the rest of your life." After I hung up, I sat quietly for a long time. In that silence, I realized I wasn't angry anymore. I also started attending group therapy for victims of financial abuse. At the first session, the facilitator, a psychologist named Dr. Ray, asked, "What's the hardest thing after leaving an abusive situation?" I raised my hand. "Learning to believe I have the right to say no without feeling guilty." He nodded. "Exactly. We're going to learn the language of boundaries. No one gets to set your value except you." From then on, I practiced answering briefly and firmly, without over-explaining. Once, a neighbor asked, "Aren't you sad that your son got arrested?" I just smiled. "Sad, yes, but it would be worse if I'd done nothing." That answer made me feel a year older in the best way. One night, after the embroidery class ended, I sat by the window and wrote a letter to Marcus that I didn't send. White paper, careful handwriting. "Son, I'm not writing to reclaim our bond or to judge you. I just want you to understand that I won't pay for you anymore. No money, no silence, no carrying the consequences of choices you made. I still pray for you, but I won't sacrifice myself for a fake peace. Mom." I folded the letter and placed it in the desk drawer where I keep an old box of receipts. Maybe I'll never send it, but just writing it down set me free. A few days later, Nora called to remind me, "Beverly, if anyone from Marcus's side or his attorney contacts you, don't respond. They'll try for a financial settlement. Just forward everything to me." I laughed. "Don't worry. I've gotten good at the art of silence." "Not just silence," Nora said. "You've learned how to choose what's worth hearing. That's real power. I started Best House, treating myself to small things I used to call luxuries. A good pair of walking shoes, a pocket map of the city, and each morning a walk along Canyon Road, a long, tree-lined street filled with galleries and artisan shops. I'd stop at a small cafe, sip coffee, and watch the sunlight come through the glass, catching the white steam rising from a porcelain cup. Every step, every breath made me feel my body coming back to life. Not for anyone else, for me. People say old age is when you slow down, but for me, it felt like learning to move at my own right pace for the first time. Time passed. Santa Fe's summer was bright and windy. I still went to the craft market every weekend, still taught the embroidery class on Tuesdays, still tracked my spending by the 50-30-20 rule Agnes taught me. And one morning, tying up my hair in the mirror, I suddenly noticed my smile had come back. Not the polite smile when someone compliments you, not the social smile in a meeting, but a real smile, natural, not for anyone else, just for me. I used to live for my child, for my husband, for the family. Now, I'm learning to live for myself slowly, quietly, but as steady as the early sunlight on Santa Fe rooftops, and I know I'll never lose that smile again. The hearing was set for a Monday morning at the end of fall, when the air in Santa Fe turns crisp and golden light slants through courthouse windows. I sat in the witness waiting room, hands on my knees. Outside, I heard the heavy footsteps of court officers, the rustle of paperwork, and that thin, watery coffee smell every courthouse seems to have. Nora sat beside me, reviewing the file, her voice low and steady. "We have everything we need, Beverly. Digital evidence, IP logs, the signature analysis, and Tessa's testimony. Today, you don't have to fight, you only have to tell the truth." I smiled, small and calm. For years I thought telling the truth only brought ridicule. Turns out, sometimes it takes a lifetime to reach a place where truth is heard. The courtroom wasn't large, with high ceilings and bright lights. Marcus was already there, in a dark suit, cropped hair, his face more drawn than before. When he saw me, he dipped his head slightly, somewhere between regret and calculation. Across the aisle, Tessa sat with her attorney, eyes down, hands clasped tight. The judge began. Digital evidence appeared on the big screen. IP access data from Marcus's office computer, emails he sent to financial partners with my forged signature, and a signature analysis confirming a 98% match. Then came Tessa's testimony. Her voice trembled, but it was clear. Marcus told me to sign his mother's name on the contract, said she'd never know. He promised it'd only be a few weeks and we'd pay it back. I was foolish enough to believe him. Marcus suddenly shot up. "You signed too! You were in on it!" The judge rapped the gavel. "Defendant, sit down." The room seemed to freeze. Then the defense tried their story. Marcus was a victim exploited by bad partners, that he didn't fully understand the financial documents, that others manipulated every decision. But then the message log appeared. On the screen, a text Marcus had sent a friend read, "If she finds out, I'll say it was a system error. Worst case, I'll fake remorse. She's old, she won't dare report her son." The room went silent. I could hear my own heartbeat between the heavy breaths of my son across from me. When the judge called my name, my legs shook a little. I stepped to the stand, right hand on the Bible, and swore to tell the truth. The lights were warm, but weighty. "Missus Hale," the judge asked, "do you have anything you want to present to the court?" I took a deep breath. "Your Honor," I began, slow and low, "I'm not here for money or to watch my son be punished. I'm here to say what many older women like me have kept quiet for too long." I paused, looking down at a few elders watching quietly from the benches. I was taught to submit from a young age, submit to a husband, to family, to my child. I thought that was love. In truth, it was fear of being abandoned, dressed up. My throat tightened, but I went on. When the person I gave birth to used that, I learned that love cannot save anything if there are no boundaries. I turned to Marcus. "Son, I forgive you. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, and it certainly doesn't mean going back." The courtroom was utterly still, only the quiet tap of the clerk's pen. That afternoon, the verdict was read. The judge spoke slowly, word by word. "This court finds the defendant, Marcus Hale, guilty of financial fraud, forging legal documents, and threatening an elder. The defendant is sentenced to 2 years and 8 months in prison, ordered to pay full financial restitution, and restricted from direct contact with the plaintiff for 5 years after release." Marcus stood motionless. I didn't cheer or clap. I just exhaled, slowly, as if I'd finally set down a boulder I'd carried on my back for years. A week later, a correctional officer called Nora. "Defendant Marcus Hale requests a supervised visit with his mother." I thought about it for a long time. In the end, I agreed. Not to hear an apology, but to close this story for good. The jail sat on the city's edge, with high concrete walls and a heavy iron gate. A guard led me through 3 doors, each closing with a cold, final sound. When Marcus walked in, I barely recognized him. Orange jumpsuit, dark circles, hollow cheeks. He sat across from me behind thick glass, his voice rough. "I just wanted to save the family. I never meant to hurt you." I looked him in the eye, gentle but firm. "No, Marcus. You sold the family to save yourself, to dodge responsibility, debt, and growing up. Every dollar you took from me was a piece of trust you can't buy back." He lowered his head, tears hitting the table. I said nothing more. There was nothing left to say. When the guard called time, I stood and looked through the glass one last time. I didn't feel anger anymore. Just a bare truth. Sometimes, losing your child is the price you pay to keep yourself. Outside the jail, the Santa Fe wind blew hard, carrying dust and sun. The sky was so blue it hurt to look at. I lifted my face to it, and my shoulders felt half as heavy. For the first time in years, I felt real freedom, not from the outside, but from within. On the way back, I stopped at my usual cafe near the plaza. The barista asked, "The usual?" I nodded. "Still a cappuccino, but add a little cinnamon, today's special." That evening, as sunset turned my small studio gold, I opened my notebook and wrote the first line of my new plan. Project New Dawn Seniors, a New Dawn. I want to turn my wounds into a handhold for others. Elder women, tricked into signing papers, men whose pensions were taken, older people living quietly in fear they deserve a place to be believed, to be heard, to be protected. I built a simple website and called for volunteers to run a free hotline for elders facing financial abuse. Nora agreed to be our legal advisor, and Lieutenant Alvarez helped connect us with social services. Agnes helped me draft a budget, and the women from the embroidery class volunteered as assistants. We chose a sunflower blooming in the desert as our symbol because no matter how dry the ground, it still turns toward the light. Night fell, and I sat alone by the window. Santa Fe was quiet. Faint music drifted from the bar up the block. I sipped tea and watched the lights shimmer on the glass. In them, I saw an older woman with silver hair whose eyes no longer held fear, only peace. I whispered to myself, "Every crack can be a doorway to light, if you dare to look." And I knew that, after everything, my life had truly begun again. On the morning of New Dawn Senior's first talk, I woke at 5 a.m. Santa Fe was still misty, a light breeze slipping through my small window, carrying the smell of coffee from the shop on the corner. I brewed a cup for myself and watched the early light filter through the trees, light that reminded me that every beginning, even a late one, is worth it. The talk was at the Plaza Vieja Community Center. The room held only 50 people, but by the time I arrived, nearly every seat was full. Most were women over 60, silver hair, knit sweaters, eyes both curious and guarded. They looked like me a few years ago, carrying stories they hadn't yet dared to tell. I took the mic, my voice a little shaky at first, then steady when I saw Agnes smiling in the front row. "Hello," I began. "I'm Beverly Hale, and today I'm not here to talk about pain, but to tell you how I walked through it." The room went quiet. I told the story of the day Marcus pulled the plane chair from under me, right in the room that used to be my home. The moment I hit that cold tile was the moment I woke up, when I realized that if I stayed silent, I'd lose my soul. I didn't speak with tears, but with truth. No one interrupted, no whispers, only eyes shifting between shock and recognition. After my story, I held up a small sheet of paper with 3 bold lines. 1. Separate money. 2. Digital evidence. 3. Support network. These 3, I said, are the 3 survival keys for everyone in this room. I explained. Separate money means keep an account no one else can access, not your child, spouse, or grandchild. Digital evidence is the habit of saving emails, texts, receipts. Don't delete anything because you don't want the hassle. Support network means people you can trust, an attorney, friends, neighbors, Community groups, the ropes that pull you back when you think you have no one. I added that with these 3 keys, I kept not only my assets but my humanity, the part that knows how to say enough to abuse. A woman in the middle row raised her hand. Do you ever regret suing your own son? I looked at her and smiled softly. Yes, but I'd regret it more if I'd done nothing. Silence is also a way of aiding harm. Heads nodded, and I knew I'd reach them. When the talk ended, I stepped off the stage. People lined up to greet me, shake my hand, some hugged me hard. In that stream of faces, I saw Tessa standing at the back, holding a canvas tote, thinner than before but with different eyes, calm and grateful. She didn't speak at first, just came closer. Thank you, she whispered, for not giving up on me, even when I stood on the wrong side. I put my hand on her shoulder and smiled. We've all stood in the wrong place, Tessa. What matters is choosing to step out. She slipped away quietly, leaving me with a peace deeper than any courtroom win. 3 days later, the Santa Fe Journal ran a piece on the event. 70-year-old woman turns pain into a movement to protect elders. The photo showed me next to a whiteboard under the hand-scrawled line, New Dawn Seniors, because silence is not safety. That morning, our hotline took more than 20 calls. Most voices trembled on the other end. Mrs. Beverly, my son holds my whole pension. My husband won't let me have my own bank card. Can you tell me how to reach Attorney Nora? I wrote down every number, every name, every story. None of them were invisible anymore. And I realized my story had become a door for others to walk through. The next month, I ran a basic credit management workshop. Agnes agreed to be the lead instructor. She brought charts, markers, even her old calculator, carefully showing each person how to check a credit score, read a statement, and lock down accounts when they suspect exploitation. Money doesn't talk, she said, making the better balk. Room laugh, but it knows how to leave with whoever controls it. The class ran 3 hours, and no one left their seat. I looked around and saw trembling hands on keyboards, eyes brightening with each click. It was the look of people reclaiming control 1 inch, 1 account, 1 password at a time. A few weeks later, Lieutenant Alvarez joined us. She presented how to recognize and prevent financial abuse in families. Her voice was crisp and to the point, no frills. The person hurting you isn't always a stranger. Sometimes they eat with you and call you mom or dad, but the law doesn't care about titles, only actions. When she finished, she glanced my way and smiled. I nodded back, knowing it wasn't just me. The system itself was changing, step by steady step. One afternoon, I received a handwritten letter from Marcus. The first line made me pause for a long time. Mom, I have no excuses left. In jail, I see that I only repeated what Dad did to you using love as a tool to control. There was less manipulation in his tone, no more rationalizing. At the end, Marcus wrote, I don't ask for forgiveness. I just hope you live well, because that will prove I didn't destroy you completely. I read it several times and set it on the table, my heart not as heavy as before. I replied briefly, Marcus, I read your letter, and I can feel the truth in it. I hope you seek counseling and learn to love without hurting. But I won't send money, and I won't intervene legally. I choose to believe you'll stand up on your own like I did. Mom. I folded the letter and sent it. When the envelope sealed, I knew the boundary between me and my son had finally been set clear and without trembling. That afternoon, I walked along the Santa Fe River. The water moved slowly, and the late-day sun scattered into thousands of flashing gold streaks across the surface. The breeze carried the scent of pine, damp earth, and the clean taste of... I thought of everything. The old house, the sleepless nights, the threatening calls, the days on the run. Then looked back at myself. now a silver-haired woman with flowers still on her hands, still able to laugh, still able to dream, and most importantly, still living. I'm not wealthy, my account isn't large, but I have enough. Enough to pay rent, enough to help a few others, enough to wake each morning without fearing the phone. I watched the river flow, saw my shadow stretch long, blending into the afternoon light. And in that moment, I knew my story was no longer a secret. It had become a reminder that freedom doesn't start with money, but with daring to say, I deserve peace. The following spring, Santa Fe turned unusually green. There was more rain. The wind smelled of wet soil and new leaves. One morning, while I was making tea, I got a call from Lieutenant Alvarez. Her voice was calm as always, but I could hear a note of caution. Mrs. Hale, I wanted to let you know, Marcus has been moved to a work release program. He's working on the city's urban tree planting crew. His rehabilitation record is good, no violations. He also submitted a request saying he will not attempt to contact you. I was quiet for a moment, listening to the breeze outside the porch. He's planting trees? Yes, she said. We're supervising. The Reentry Center also sent a behavior report. They note real progress, especially in emotional control and cooperation. I thanked her and hung up. Sitting there for a long while, I looked out the window. On the corner, a group of men in reflective vests were digging soil and staking straight rows of saplings. I didn't know if Marcus was among them, but the thought tightened my chest for the first time in years. The word work attached to my son didn't come with pain. That evening, I opened my laptop and went to the Greening Our Cities program website, the project Marcus had joined. Photos popped up. Work release participants planting trees, picking up trash, repainting graffiti walls, tending parks. In one, I saw a familiar figure, tall, thin, a baseball cap on, a shovel in hand. I couldn't be sure it was Marcus, but those slightly rounded shoulders brought back the image of the boy who once helped his father plant an apple tree in our backyard. That night, I wrapped a new gardening kit, gloves, pruning shears, and a book titled Greening Our Cities, Healing Through Labor. I sent it to the Reentry Center's address, with the sender listed as someone who believes in change. I didn't sign my name. I didn't need to. Sometimes forgiveness doesn't require the recipient to know exactly who sent it, only that it was sent gently at the right time. A few months later, New Dawn Seniors was invited to host a community workshop at the city library. The topic was financial freedom and self-respect in later life. That morning I prepared like always, printed materials, tested the mic, adjusted the slides. When I stepped onto the small stage, light filtered in from the windows, warm and soft. More than 100 people came twice our first event. I retold the stories and shared the 3 survival keys model I'd spoken about before. Everything went smoothly until I glanced at the back row where a man leaned against the wall, arms folded. Marcus. He wasn't in prison clothes, just jeans and a gray button-down. His eyes neither avoided mine nor pleaded. He simply watched, silent, like a listener. I kept going, even though my heart skipped once. When I finished, the room filled with applause. I smiled, bowed, and when I looked up, Marcus was still there, neither coming closer nor leaving. After everyone left, I walked over on my own. "Hello, Marcus," I said, steady as if greeting an old acquaintance. He dipped his head. "I only wanted to listen. I didn't mean to bother you." "Good. Then let's have coffee in a public place. This isn't reconciliation." I paused. "Just conversation." He looked up, eyelids flickering, then nodded. We sat in a small cafe on the corner of Canyon Road. Our table was by the window, looking out on a sidewalk lined with bougainvillea. Marcus set his cup down, hands still laced together, his voice low and slow. "I don't know where to start. Every day at work I watch the trees take root and I feel myself get smaller. I get that. Fixing anything means planting a little at a time. You can't force it to bloom. I looked out the window where a few young people pedaled by on bikes. You're right, I said, working with your hands can heal the self. It makes you face the truth that everything takes time. He gave a thin smile, eyes still down. The kids are doing well. Tessa sends photos, and I can view them at the center. I'm glad they don't hate me. They don't, I said. They're learning to understand. And that matters more. For a long moment, only the sound of a spoon tapping a porcelain cup. Finally, Marcus spoke softly. Mom, I'm sorry. I don't expect you to believe me. I just wanted to say it once. I nodded, not interrupting. I used to think an apology was the ending, but it's really the beginning. I'm learning to take responsibility without expecting forgiveness right away. I set my hand on the table without touching his. Forgiveness is a process, Marcus, I said, not a blank check. I'm on that road and you should walk your part too. Everyone has their own stretch. No one can shorten it for anyone else. Marcus nodded slightly, eyes wet. I understand. Thank you for talking with me. I stood up, leaving the unpaid check behind. Consider it my treat, I said with a small smile. Not out of debt, out of courtesy. When I left the cafe, I wasn't shaking anymore. No fear, no anger, only alertness and peace. Sometimes a boundary isn't a wall. It's a door open wide enough for air, with a latch to keep you safe. A few weeks later, New Dawn seniors received a small grant from the Santa Fe Community Fund. It wasn't a lot, but enough to add 2 new classes, one on legal self-defense skills and one on digital budget management. Enrollment doubled. Many came from nearby towns, saying they'd heard about us on local radio. I sat in our little meeting room, looking around at bright faces, people who once thought they had no more value. In them, I saw the resilience I once lost. Agnes came over and set a hand on my shoulder. Beverly, see? From one story, it's become a small movement. I smiled. I only plant seeds. Everyone else is doing the watering. Late that afternoon, I left the office and walked through the Central Park. Sunlight slanted through rows of new trees, fresh green leaves, trunks still wrapped in protective ties. I stopped and thought, maybe one of these was planted by Marcus. A light breeze passed, stretching my shadow along the sidewalk. That shadow didn't wobble like before it walked beside me, just right, without weighing me down. I thought, if I ever become a mother again, it will be a different role. Not the one who carries everything, not the rescuer, but a companion equal, able to love, to stop, and to say no. I smiled to myself. The shade behind me was still there, but this time I walked in my own light. I used to think that once things quieted down, the past would learn to sleep. Turns out the past is like a wind, you can't stop it from blowing against you. That day, I'd just finished a small New Dawn seniors workshop at the community center. The talk on the right to refuse to sign drew over 80 attendees, aging eyes lit with new confidence. I packed up, said goodbye, and noticed a man across the street, hands in his pockets, staring without blinking. At first I thought he was just curious. But when I turned down the next block, he followed. Not fast, not slow, keeping just enough distance to chill my heart. I stopped in the parking lot and turned around. "What do you want from me?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. He smirked, his voice rough like smoke. "Nothing serious, Mrs. Hale. I just want to talk. About Tessa Lynn." That name made my blood go cold. "I lent her money," he continued, "and I heard you're the mother-in-law with assets. I just want to know if you plan to help the family." I looked him in the eye. "I don't help anyone by enabling threats. You should talk to an attorney, not me." He shrugged and stepped a half-pace closer. "An attorney? That takes time. You've got money, I've got patience. Everybody softens eventually. I pulled a copy of my protective order from my bag and held it up in his face. You've crossed a line. Any behavior that looks like stalking or harassment, I have the right to call the police immediately. And I will. I dialed Lieutenant Alvarez. He hesitated. Don't think I don't know who you are, he said, backing toward his car, growling. Everyone's got a weak spot, even tough old ladies. In under 5 minutes, a patrol car pulled in. Alvarez stepped out, eyes sharp. You all right, Beverly? I am. But he knows too much. Alvarez scanned the area and signaled her team. We've confirmed it. He's a former lender of Tessa's, previously accused of predatory rates. I'll take it from here. When the car drove off with the man inside, I realized my hands were shaking. Alvarez put a hand on my shoulder. You followed every step exactly right. That's why we're launching an emergency hotline that connects New Dawn directly to the police center. You'll be the first to pilot it. A week later, New Dawn officially launched the Safe Connect hotline with support from the police department and the local community fund. I sat by the newly installed phone, feeling proud and moved. That line would let elders under financial threat report immediately, without wading through red tape. At the same time, we opened a new training: spotting sham loan contracts and avoiding blanket power of attorney. Agnes taught everyone how to read the fine print, and I shared real cases from people pressured by family to sign away their homes to those who lost everything through a temporary authorization. Sometimes, let me help you with the paperwork. Mom is the first line of a tragedy, I said, and the room went silent. More good news came from Tessa. She called one late afternoon, her voice lighter than I'd ever heard. Mom, I got a part-time job as a library assistant at the public library. The kids are settled at school too. Life is simple, but I feel at peace. I smiled, eyes stinging. Peace doesn't mean easy, Tessa. It's the reward for those who choose to pay the price. I know, she said. And I'm learning. When I hung up, my heart softened. Things seemed to be finding a new rhythm, a quieter life with more meaning. A few weeks later, I received a letter from Marcus's re-entry center. Inside were a few familiar, neat lines without excuses. Mom, my counseling program suggests I meet with the kids. I won't force it. If you and Tessa agree, I'm requesting a meeting at the center under a therapist's supervision. Below was the therapist's signature and confirmation that Marcus had complied with his behavior program. Tessa came by that evening with the letter, eyes red. I'm scared, but I know the kids need their dad. I agree, as long as it's supervised. What do you think? I didn't answer right away. That night, I sat by the window, watching moonlight spill across the floor. My head was full of questions. Had he truly changed? Was I opening a door to peace, or inviting risk back in? But then I thought of the 2 children, innocent lives caught between adult mistakes. I remembered Marcus's eyes when he talked about planting trees, about learning to take responsibility without demanding forgiveness. I decided. The next morning, I texted Tessa. I support it, but with conditions. Supervised at the therapy center, no private conversations, no talk about money, and if there's any negative sign, we stop immediately. Tessa replied, I promise. The meeting was held in the family therapy room at the center. A small room with pale yellow walls and double-pane windows for staff to observe. Marcus sat waiting in the chair opposite, calm, hands loosely clasped. When the kids walked in, the girl in a blue dress, the boy holding a toy robot, the room went completely still. Dad, the girl whispered. Marcus leaned forward and smiled a plain, unpolished smile. You've grown, he said, voice thick. I missed you. They sat and began talking about school, friends, little things like an art contest, and weekend pizza. Marcus made no promises. shed no tears. He just listened and asked gentle questions. No drama, no grand redemption, just three people talking as if time had paused to give them some quiet. I stood outside the glass, a hand over my heart. I don't know when the tears started, not from pain, but from relief. Relief because I saw a real light, not one stitched from apologies. A light that appears when there's no room left to lie, and the only way forward is to live honestly. That night, I opened my journal and wrote, "Maybe people don't change because they're persuaded. They truly change when there's no room left to lie, and then what remains is the truthful part we've hoped for all along." I closed the notebook, turned off the light, and lay still in the dark. Outside, the Santa Fe wind moved through the new trees, leaves whispering. I closed my eyes and, in my dream, walked under a canopy of shade, sunlight dappling through just bright enough to believe, just dim enough to forgive. After more than 2 years of operating with nothing but phones, a few folding tables, and the stubborn will of elders who refused to be quiet, New Dawn Seniors finally had a real office. It was a second-floor room in a red brick building on Cerrillos, old but bright, with windows facing the street, flooded with morning sun and casting long afternoon shadows on the wall. We didn't have a big sign, just a simple whiteboard, New Dawn Seniors, because no one deserves to be silenced. Inside, Agnes and I split shifts with a few new volunteers. Each person had a strength. June handled emergency intake calls, our young staffer Maria entered data, and I took direct counseling and scheduled trainings. Now, every day I heard new stories, some heartbreaking, some oddly funny, all true. I started learning professional storytelling. Not to become a speaker, but to deliver the message, right to hook the heart, hold it with conflict, win empathy with countermoves, and close with transformation. My instructor was a former journalist named Matt, graying hair, warm voice. He said, "Beverly, you're not just telling your story, you're telling a generation's. Every fall you took is a frame someone else will use to stand up." I wrote in my notebook, "Don't tell to be pitied, tell so others know they're not alone." From then on, my talks felt different. People didn't just cry, they left with eyes that knew they could begin again. One day, we got a special case. A 73-year-old woman named Lucille arrived in a wrinkled floral dress, clutching a thick stack of papers. Her voice shook. "My daughter opened credit in my name. I only found out when the bank sent a collection notice. I didn't sign anything." I glanced through her papers, online loan forms, phantom credit cards, transaction addresses matching her daughter's home. Agnes frowned. "This is identity theft. We need to freeze your credit right now." The three of us worked for 3 hours, called the 3 major credit bureaus, filed dispute forms, and drafted a fraud report. Lucille's hand trembled as she signed. She whispered, "I've never reported anyone in my life, but I suppose it's time." I held her hand. "You're not reporting your daughter, you're reporting wrongdoing. Sometimes real love is the act of stopping." 3 weeks later, the bank confirmed the debt was canceled and the case referred for criminal investigation. Lucille sent me a handwritten card. "I thought I'd lost everything. Turns out justice smells like chamomile tea, slow but gentle." I kept that card in my desk. Whenever I got tired, I took it out and read it. That August, I was invited to speak in Albuquerque at a senior council conference. The drive was a bit over 2 hours, and midway my old back pain flared. I pulled over, breathed deep, remembered my doctor's words, "Your body has worked for 70 years, treat it like a friend, not a tool." I rubbed ointment, stretched, drank water, and rested for half an hour. When I got back on the road, I realized I was learning to care for myself without guilt. It was a lesson I'd forgotten through decades of being a mother, a wife, and a fixer of everything. The talk went better than I expected. As I left the stage, a woman hugged me, tears running down. "Mrs. Beverly, your story helped me say out loud that my husband controls every credit card." I thought I was stupid. Now I know I need help. I smiled. No one is stupid for trusting someone they love. All that matters is you start again today. A few weeks later, Marcus wrote. He said he'd finished the impulse control course and had been recommended to join a community tree planting program with nonprofits including New Dawn. "I know you'll hesitate," he wrote, "but I want to do something that's truly useful. Not to be praised, but to work with my own hands." I read the letter and wrestled with it all night. Part of me wanted to refuse, afraid of people's eyes, afraid of feelings that haven't fully healed. But another part understood that learning to trust again is also a kind of healing. The next morning, I called Lieutenant Alvarez to ask her opinion. She said, "If there's supervision and clear rules, there's no reason to refuse. This isn't forgiveness, it's community responsibility." I agreed. Marcus was accepted as a volunteer caring for the trees around our office area, under the supervision of the city's Green Works team. On his first day, he showed up in a reflective vest and gloves. No one said anything. I only said one line. "Here, everyone is a worker. No more, no less." He nodded. "I understand." And for the rest of that day, I watched Marcus work quietly, watering trees, clearing leaves, never looking for my eyes, just working. I realized that sometimes atonement doesn't need words, only labor. In early fall, the local papers ran a long piece. A 70-year-old woman builds a network to stop financial abuse of seniors. Next to it was a photo of me and Agnes in front of our office, with a row of trees Marcus had planted behind us. After the article, our inbox overflowed. Requests for help, thank you notes, urgent stories. One person wrote, "I'm 62, being forced to sign a mortgage, please guide me." Another wrote, "I want to volunteer and learn how to be strong like you." The number of people needing help rose so quickly we had to add more shifts. I decided to hire a part-time financial counselor, a woman who had worked at a bank and retired early. She helped me compile a toolkit called 10 Financial Safety Steps for Older Adults, from how to read statements to setting up secure online banking. We printed hundreds of copies and handed them out for free at markets and workshops. Sometimes people came to the office just to say, "I read it now, I know what to do." Hearing that alone made all the effort worth it. One evening, as I was clearing my desk, a message from Tessa came in. It was a photo of the two kids at their school concert, the girl with a violin, the boy at the drums, smiles so bright they warmed my heart. Below it, Tessa wrote, "Mom, we're okay. Marcus has written to them too. Maybe one day, every wound will become a memory." I printed the photo and tucked it into the journal I keep by my bed. That night, I sat on the balcony, the autumn wind carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. On the street below, warm yellow lights reflected off the red tile roofs of the old row houses. I sat still, hands around a cup of chamomile tea, my heart as light as a page that's just received its final sentence. I thought to myself, peace isn't loud. It arrives like early sunlight on red tiles, quiet, but enough to see that everything around you is still bright. And in that small city, I knew the imperfect chapters of my life had closed to make room for a new one, not dazzling, but true and gentle. 3 years since the day I left San Diego. 3 years since the moment I heard a chair scrape out from under my back and knew that everything in my house, in my life, had been turned upside down. Today, on a fresh Santa Fe morning, New Dawn seniors hosted our biggest workshop yet. The community center hall was packed, over 200 faces, most of them women over 60, people who once believed their voices had lost their value. I stepped onto the wooden podium, mic in hand, under soft lights. Before speaking, I took a deep breath. Sunlight from the windows fell across my hands, the hands that once shook as I signed papers, the hands that were once pulled from my own chair. "I want to begin," I said, "with a story about a chair." The room fell quiet. I told it the day my son yanked a chair from behind me in the middle of a meal in a room that used to be full of laughter. In that moment, I said, I realized that in my own house, I was no longer seen as a person, only as a wallet that could sign. A few people lowered their heads, some wiped away tears. I went on, steady, without bitterness. But that was also the day I started learning the price of freedom. It's not a one-time payment, it's the courage you pay every day. By choosing, by saying no, and by not turning back when others call you selfish. Applause spreads scattered at first, then swelling. Like rain falling on land that's been dry for years. Sitting in the back that day was Marcus. He wore the city's volunteer green crew shirt, quiet and within boundaries. No one pointed, and no one asked. Maybe everyone understood. Someone trying to start over doesn't need a pat on the back just to be left in peace. Tessa was in the front row with the two kids. When the talk ended, they ran up and hugged me. The hug was light as breath, not binding, but true to the bone. Marcus came last, keeping a respectful distance, and gave a small nod. I answered with a smile, not bitter, not sweet, just real. A local photographer asked to take a picture. Me, Marcus, Tessa, the two kids stood together under the golden Santa Fe sun. I thought, this is the most honest, if imperfect family photo I've ever had. At the end, I announced the launch of the Early Seed Fund, a new branch of New Dawn to help cover legal fees and finance classes for vulnerable seniors. I spoke slowly. We can't fix the past, but we can help others avoid repeating it. Every donation, every volunteer hour, every shared story, each is a seed. And when one person stands up, the weeds of fear retreat. When I bowed, the hall rose to its feet. The applause rolled like waves, echoing inside my chest. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was fighting something, I was simply living. That evening, after everyone had gone, Nora and I sat on the community center steps. The sky was crystal clear, the stars so bright it felt like we could reach them. 3 years, Nora said, handing me a cup of coffee. Do you remember that night you called me, your voice shaking because you were afraid you wouldn't withdraw the money in time? I laughed, leaning back to look at the sky. I remember. I thought I would die from panic. But now I know I only let the weakest part of me die so the stronger part could live. We counted stars in silence for a while. Softly I said, I haven't grown old for nothing, Nora. She chuckled. Not at all. You're getting younger in the way only those who've lost everything know how to begin. The Santa Fe night wind carried the scent of pine with a hint of dry sand. I took a sip, warmth spreading down into my palms. When I got home, I opened my well-worn journal. On a fresh page, I wrote, I am Beverly Hale, 70 years old. I have learned to say no, and also to say enough to fear. I don't need a perfect ending. I just need to choose to begin each day. I put the pen down and closed the journal. The desk lamp glowed over the new family photo we'd taken that morning. Everyone was smiling, not because every wound had healed, but because we were still here. I looked out the window, desert wind moving through the trees, the rustle of leaves like an old song. Tomorrow, I'll wake up again, make tea, open the office, and answer the calls for help. Tomorrow, I'll begin again. Before I close this story, I want to send you who've walked with me through this long journey a heartfelt thank you. If what I went through made you pause to think about your mother, your father, or simply about the courage it takes when we're forced to choose ourselves, then maybe this story has found its meaning. I would truly love to know where you're watching from and which moment in my journey moved you the most. Please share with me in the comments so I know there are still hearts out there, beating to the rhythm of healing. If this story touched you, please like, subscribe, and stay with me for new journeys where every wound can bloom if we listen with love and give it time.